First of all, a big thanks to Atner for the opportunity to make my ideas known. Hello, my name is Krasimir Kavakchiev. I'm the author of the only monograph published so far devoted to English compositional aspect specifically, as well as of an English grammar for Bulgarians. This presentation discusses English comprehensive grammars, higher class grammars for intermediate and advanced learners and for linguists. Since the audience here mostly consists of people well versed in linguistics, acquaintance with notions such as aspect, perfectivity, imperfectivity, nominal determination, including articles, etc., is taken for granted. Many decades ago, in an essay called Verbs and Times, Zeno Wendler, together with some colleague philosophers, proposed the classification of situations used in most of today's aspectological research and partly explaining the phenomenon of aspect in aspectless languages such as English. By the way, there are no aspectless languages, but this is not something that I can discuss now. Wendler's situations are for states, like Ed drinks or Ed drinks beer. Activities, Ed is drinking beer. Accomplishments, Ed drank a beer. And achievements, Ed noticed a beer. 2 decades later, in 1971, a very important event happened. Henk Verkuil, a Dutch linguist, made a finding of huge significance for linguistics, compositional aspect. Compositional aspect is a phenomenon very well known in theoretical linguistics, but its importance for applied linguistic disciplines, grammar and dictionary writing, language teaching, etc., remains ignored. 2 recent papers by Vesna Bulatovic argue that compositional aspect and the article aspect interplay are phenomena that are so hugely important for English and similar languages that they must be taught not only to speakers of verbal aspect languages, the so-called verbal aspect languages like Slavic, Greek, Georgian, Chinese, etc. They must be taught to all learners of English and to native speakers. What is compositional aspect? What is verbal aspect? Let's have a look at these sentences. Ed drank a beer. This is a sentence where perfectivity, this is a perfective sentence, and perfectivity is compositionally explicated. Why compositionally? Because it is not in the verb. It is in the whole sentence. Second sentence. Ed drank beer when he was young. This is imperfectivity, compositionally explicated. Why? Because it is explicated in the sentence and not in the verb. Third sentence. Holidaymakers drank a beer in this pub after the beach. Their children stayed behind. This is imperfectivity again. It is again compositionally explicated. Why? Because it is not by the verb. And now let's have a look at these 2 sentences. Ed was drinking a beer. And Ed used to drink a beer, or Ed would drink a beer. Here we have imperfectivity, and the imperfectivity is expressed directly, expressed, not explicated, but directly expressed through the verb, in the verb. In Ed was drinking a beer, and also in Ed used to or would drink a beer, through the verb, by the verb only. It can thus easily be seen that aspect in any language is either verbal or compositional. Consider now the following sentences constructed by me and analyzed at length in several publications. First, the tourist visited the castle. This is a perfective sentence. It belongs to the so-called perfective schema, Verkuil's perfective schema. Look at the other 3 sentences. Tourists visited the castle, the tourists visited castles, and the tourists hated the castle. These sentences belong to Verkuil's imperfective schema. They are imperfective, whereas the first sentence is perfective. The last 3 sentences, the imperfective ones, contain so-called Verkuilian leaks. Verkuilian leaks shown and quickly explained. Let's have a look again at the tourist visited the castle. This is perfectivity. There is no leak in this sentence. Whereas in the other three sentences there are leaks. Where are they? Tourists visited the castle. The leak is in the subject. Tourists, but I will explain this later. So tourists visited the castle is imperfective. The tourists visited castles is again imperfective. And the tourists hated the castle is again imperfective. Why? How do perfectivity and imperfectivity arise? They arise in the following way. The tourist visited the castle. Here we have the so-called by Vertel plus specified quantity of A in the tourist and in the castle. This means, yes, specified quantity of A or specified quantity of something, or you can also call it bounded. And we also have visited in the verb, and visit, the verb visit is a telic one. It is not atelic, non-telic, it is a telic verb. And the tourist visited the castle. This is a perfective sentence because there is no leak. Look at the other three sentences. Tourists visited the castle. Here we have a leak in tourists. Why a leak? Because we have the so-called zero article, which means that we have minus specified quantity of something or non-boundedness. Why? Because the zero article explicates non-boundedness. Or we can have the tourist visited castles, where we have a leak in castles, the object. Why? Because there is a zero article. Because the article the is dropped here, it is missing, and therefore castles is something non-bounded. And this non-bounded something is mapped onto the verb. And we can have the tourist hated the castle, where we have a leak in the verb. Hated is a non-telic verb, and here we have a leak as well. This short explanation above is common knowledge in theoretical linguistics, but in English applied linguistics, including grammars and language teaching, it is a sad terra incognita. As Bulatovic put it recently, compositional aspect regularities have not made their way into research on article use by learners of English as a second language. They are not described in grammars of English. They are not mentioned in English course books, and they are not taught in schools and colleges. This paper is an attempt to repair the status quo by proposing ways on how compositional aspect and the article aspect interplay must find their way into English grammars, especially larger comprehensive ones. Grammars must tackle the temporality of situation participants. This is a somewhat complicated issue. I will exemplify it using two of the examples above. First sentence, the tourist visited castle. Second sentence, tourist visited the castle. What do we mean by castles in one? Do we mean a group of castles, physical objects, standing simultaneously on nearby hills? No. We mean a chain of castles on the time axis, visited one after the other. What do we mean by tourists in two? Do we mean a group of tourists who were in the castle yesterday? No. We mean a chain of tourists on the time axis, visiting the castle one after the other. That is, what does this mean? This means that castles and tourists here are not physical things. They are kinetic, moving objects in the minds of speaker and hearer. Grammars must explain this. It is not too difficult to understand. Grammars must also explain default aspectual values of sentences. This issue is easier to understand than the previous one. Look at these two sentences. Ed drank a beer this evening. This is perfectivity. Ed drank a beer every evening. This is imperfectivity. It is not appropriate to say that the phrase or sentence Ed drank a beer is only perfective. Why? Because it can also be imperfective, as in the second example. Hence, perfectivity is its default meaning. Grammars must introduce and explain thoroughly the concept of default aspectual meaning, standing for unless otherwise indicated in a sentence or context. Grammars must also explain adverbials and aspectual readings. Adverbs, especially temporal ones, are frequently discussed in aspectology and theoretical linguistics in general, but the descriptions are often inadequate. English grammars ignore this problem field, adverbs versus aspect, systematically. Has anyone ever seen in an English grammar a discussion of why we say Ed drank the beer in an hour, but we say Ed drank beer for an hour? I haven't in a comprehensive grammar. Well, I have in my own grammar, and it is explained at length there. But it is an English grammar for Bulgarians. It is not a comprehensive grammar. Now let's have a look at sentences with three situation participants which are necessary for grammars, in my opinion. Consider the following sentences that are rare and valuable with three situation participant NPs constructed by me. A single NP changes the aspectual meaning in each of the latter three sentences. Look at the first sentence. The valet parked our car in the nearby garage. This is a perfective sentence. There is no leak. The valet, okay, let's have another three sentences. The valet parked cars, this is a leak, in the nearby garage, and this is an imperfective sentence. The valet parked our car in nearby garages. What do we have here? A leak. In the indirect object, or you can call it a place adverb, doesn't matter. And this is an imperfective sentence because we have a leak. And the third sentence, valets parked our car in the nearby garage. This is an imperfective sentence. Why? Because we have valets, a leak in the subject. And I ask, isn't this remarkable? Aren't these sentences remarkable? Aren't they beautiful? I find that they are. They are both remarkable and beautiful. English grammars must deal with the phenomenon, compositional aspect and the article aspect interplay, and include it in their texts. Summary. What precisely English grammars must do to incorporate compositional aspect and the article aspect interplay is a complex issue that cannot be explained in 15 minutes. But I hope to have shown now that these phenomena are, as Bulatovic put it, so hugely important that they must be taught even to native speakers. English grammars need a reform in this sphere. They must take into account as soon as possible what has already been very well established in theoretical linguistics. And now these are the key publications that I mentioned. And finally, I thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much.